Welcome to Book Summary Podcast, your gateway to personal transformation. Each episode delivers big ideas from the world's most impactful books on mindset, productivity, and success, all in just a few minutes. Ready to turn knowledge into action? Let's get started.
Welcome to The Deep Dive, your go-to source for cutting through the information overload. We sift through the stacks of articles, research, and notes you share with us, distilling them down to those truly important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Think of it as your shortcut to being well-informed, maybe with a few surprising facts and hopefully a good laugh along the way. Today, we're embarking on a pretty fascinating deep dive. We're looking into a guide that promises to help us build great things and, maybe more importantly, become great ourselves. We're talking about Steven Bartlett's groundbreaking book, The Diary of a CEO, The 33 Laws. Now, Steven Bartlett, he isn't just that familiar voice from the chart-topping podcast. He's an entrepreneurial force. He founded these hugely successful marketing groups, working with giants like Uber, Apple, Coca-Cola. He raised, get this, $100 million in investment. And he's invested in over 40 companies since then. But what really sets him apart, I think, beyond the business side, is the sheer amount of wisdom he's collected. Over 700 hours of conversations with world leaders, neuroscientists, CEOs of billion-dollar companies. It's incredible.
In his book, it's not about, fleeting business trends or the latest marketing hack. No, this is about timeless psychology-rooted principles, stuff that applies to anyone, anywhere, really anytime. And the book itself, it's just a masterclass in design. Simple, really powerful visuals, stories over just raw data, but embracing nuance too. Like saying, often attributed to Einstein, everything should be as simple as possible, but not simple. This book really nails that. It distills these big truths.
Exactly. And that essence, that core wisdom, that's what makes this so compelling, I think. Bartlett organizes these 33 laws very carefully into what he calls the 4 pillars of greatness: the self, the story, the philosophy, and the team. And these pillars, they aren't just, random categories. They actually form a really comprehensive framework, almost like an architectural plan for achieving greatness, whether your focus is more on personal growth, self-mastery, or leading a big organization. It covers both. What's really powerful here is that the insights aren't just from Bartlett's own journey, which is incredible in itself, but they're also backed up, reinforced by endorsements from people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who loves Bartlett's raw entrepreneurial spirit, and Robert Greene, who often praises his sort of unconventional path and very practical wisdom. Jay Shetty, too, the author and host, he highlights how Bartlett expertly weaves together academic research, his own deeply personal experiences, and these really captivating stories. It provides a truly actionable guide. It's quite a rare and powerful mix of practical application and deep psychological understanding.
I couldn't agree more. It feels very grounded. So our mission for this deep dive, then, is to unpack some of the most surprising and, frankly, impactful laws. The ones that really challenge conventional wisdom. We're looking for those genuinely practical strategies, things you can actually apply in your own life, maybe starting today. I'm really excited to see what we uncover here. Okay, let's begin our journey with Bartlett's first pillar, the self. He really champions this as the mastery of oneself. Foundational, isn't it? Beautifully put by Leonardo da Vinci, who said something like, "One can have no smaller or greater mastery than mastery of oneself. You will never have a greater or lesser dominion than that over yourself. The height of your success is gauged by your self-mastery, the depth of your failure by your self-abandonment." It just suggests that everything else, all external success, it flows from this deep personal foundation. And what really grabbed me about this first pillar, it's how his very first law seems to flip conventional thinking right on its head. That's law 1. Fill your 5 buckets in the right order.
So this law suggests your potential, what you can really achieve and contribute, is determined by 5 interconnected buckets: your knowledge, your skills, your network, resources, and reputation. But the core idea, the almost radical part, is that the order you fill these buckets in is absolutely crucial for any kind of long-term, sustained success. Steven himself tells this profound story from his early days. He was just 18, a startup founder, and he was wrestling with this huge moral question. Was building a company, aiming to get wealthy, nobler than, say, going back to Africa where he was born to actively save lives? This question really weighed on him for years, until a chance encounter in New York. He met Radhanath Swami, a world-renowned guru. Bartlett posed his question, and the Swami just looked at him for a long moment, silent, and then said with this amazing simplicity, "You cannot pour from empty buckets."
Wow. That simple statement, yeah. Bartlett describes it as bringing immense clarity. The guru wasn't dismissing his desire to help others, not at all. He was highlighting a fundamental truth. To really have a massive positive impact, to truly pour into others, you first need to build your own capacity. And these 5 buckets, knowledge, skills, network, resources, reputation, they're not just a random list. They actually progress naturally. It's like a cascade. You start with knowledge, maybe formal education, self-study, whatever. When you apply that knowledge consistently, practice it, it becomes a skill. Then, once you have valuable knowledge and real skills, you become professionally valuable. That naturally helps your network grow.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. And with knowledge, skills, and a network, your access to resources just broadens. And finally, when you have those first 4, a strong, positive reputation almost inevitably follows. What Bartlett really emphasizes, and I find this particularly compelling, is that an investment in the first bucket, knowledge, is the highest yielding investment you can make. Because when that fundamental knowledge is applied, when it becomes a real skill, it creates this powerful ripple effect. It helps fill all the other buckets down the line. He also really keenly identifies what he calls the ego trap.
The ego trap.
Yeah, our ego, that inner voice wanting immediate gratification, it often pushes us to skip those first 2 crucial buckets, knowledge and skills. We rush towards getting something tangible like more money, a fancy title, immediate status or reputation. He shares an example, a junior employee named Richard. No prior management experience, but he got offered a CEO job at a fast-growing startup. Bartlett admits he doubted it at first, but Richard genuinely had the deep knowledge and the practical skills needed to actually succeed in that role. And here's the really critical insight for, long-term resilience. There are only 2 buckets that any such professional earthquake can never empty: your knowledge, and it can never unlearn your skills.
That's powerful.
Isn't it? A professional shakeup, an economic downturn, a huge industry shift can wipe out your network, drain your resources, even damage your reputation temporarily. But what you fundamentally know and what you can do, those are permanent assets. They're your true foundation, your ultimate safety net.
That really is a profound way to think about personal growth. It forces you to question your priorities, doesn't it? Are you chasing that instant validation, the quick win? Or are you really committed to building that resilient internal foundation of knowledge and skills that lasts a lifetime? It's about playing the long game. The big takeaway seems to be, stop chasing the quick status or cash. True, lasting wealth and impact come from relentlessly investing in what you know and what you can do, because those are the only things nobody can ever take away. Makes you think. What's one skill you're committed to truly mastering this week? How we start filling that knowledge bucket. And that leads nicely into another really impactful idea about mastery. Law 2. To master it, you must create an obligation to teach it. The core idea here is simple, but wow, it's powerful. The most effective way, the fastest way, to truly master something is by committing to teaching it. And sort of as a side effect, this naturally helps you build an audience around your learning process. Bartlett shares this very relatable story about his own stage fright. He was 14 at the school awards night, and he just froze on stage, utter terror.
Ended up blurting out some, as he calls them, cliched, nonsensical remarks, and quickly retreated. We've all been there, maybe. Fast forward to age 21. He makes this pivotal promise to himself. Every single day, 7 p.m., write a tweet or make a short video with one single idea. Then, 8 p.m., post it online. No excuses. This wasn't just casual interest. He deliberately made learning and sharing an obligation, not just an interest. And this daily ritual, this commitment to releasing his knowledge as it evolved, it literally transformed his ability to speak, think clearly, synthesize ideas.
It's fascinating, isn't it? What he tapped into there is this ingenious psychological tool, skin in the game. When you have something tangible to lose, money, reputation, a public commitment, it just raises the stakes, and that dramatically speeds up your learning. Think about practical examples. You want to really learn about a company, don't just read the reports, buy a few shares. Suddenly you're invested.
Literally.
Exactly. Want to understand Web3? Buy an NFT. Ownership makes the abstract real. Or struggling with gym consistency, create a WhatsApp group. Commit to sharing your workouts daily. Financial or social currency at stake creates that crucial obligation. This is also the heart of the famous Feynman technique for accelerated learning. Richard Feynman, the Nobel laureate physicist, he famously said something like, "If I couldn't reduce it to the freshman level, it means we don't really understand it."
Right, the ultimate test of understanding.
Precisely. The Feynman technique is basically 4 steps. 1, learn it thoroughly. 2, teach it to a child for simplification. 3, share it, get feedback. 4, review and adjust. It's this iterative process that ruthlessly strips away complexity and forces you to truly internalize the core concepts.
So for anyone listening who's grappling with a new skill or concept, this gives such clear direction. Don't just consume information passively. Find a way to externalize it. Create that skin in the game. Could you explain a complex work thing to a new colleague by Friday? Or write a simple summary of that book you just read and share it. Even just promising yourself you'll be able to explain it clearly to anyone. The commitment is a powerful motivator. The big takeaway, don't just collect knowledge, release it. Teaching benefits the teacher as much, maybe more than the student. It solidifies your understanding. Okay, let's shift gears slightly to a really crucial aspect of communication, especially today. Law 3. You must never disagree. Now, this isn't about, being a pushover or avoiding conflict entirely. It's about mastering communication, influence, even negotiation by avoiding opening with disagreement. Bartlett uses this vivid childhood memory. His mother shouting heatedly at his father for hours, while his father would either ignore her or just leave the room. This early observation showed him how ineffective direct confrontation often is for actually achieving understanding or resolution.
And that anecdote resonates so strongly with recent neuroscience. Tully Sherritt, a neuroscientist at UCL, did this fascinating study published in Nature Neuroscience. They monitored brain activity during disagreements. What they found was illuminating. When people agreed, their brains literally lit up. They were more receptive, open to processing information. But if they were disagreeing, their brains seemed to freeze and shut down. They became significantly less receptive to the other person's viewpoint.
Wow, literally shutting down.
Literally. You see this play out all the time in politics, like with climate change discussions. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence, Pew Research found that the number of U.S. Republicans believing in man-made climate change actually decreased over 10 years. It strongly suggests that just arguing harder, even with facts, isn't working. It might even backfire. So the most effective strategy is actually counterintuitive. If you want your point heard, you absolutely cannot start with, "No, you're wrong," or "I disagree." Instead, you strategically find common ground first. State what you do agree on. Show you understand their argument. As Bartlett puts it, the strength of any carefully reasoned, logical argument isn't likely to be recognized when you open with disagreement. Unquote. By starting with commonality or empathy, you keep their brain in that receptive state, giving your logic a chance to actually land.
That's a huge reframing of how we approach discussions. Imagine applying that daily. In a meeting, instead of, "No, that won't work, try, I see your point about X, and I agree with Y. My main concern, though, is Z." It shifts the whole dynamic from a fight to a collaborative dialogue. The takeaway feels like, our words should be bridges, not barriers. Disagree less, understand more. Maybe paradoxically, to be understood more effectively. Okay, building on how we perceive information, let's explore Law 5. You must lean into bizarre behavior. This one feels vital for staying relevant, for capitalizing on change. You have to cultivate a willingness to lean in to new, often weird-seeming behaviors, ideas, information. The alternative, leaning out because it feels uncomfortable or conflicts with what you know, cognitive dissonance, that's a path to irrelevance. Bartlett starts with this great cautionary tale. A music store CEO saying, "People love music, will always be in business." He was right. People loved music, but he completely missed how they wanted it. He clung to CDs while iTunes was emerging. He leaned out, refused to even discuss the digital threat. His global chain eventually went bust.
And we've seen this pattern again and again, haven't we? It's almost tragicomic. Clifford Stoll in '95, writing in Newsweek, confidently predicting no online database will replace your daily newspaper. The irony. Newsweek later went fully digital itself. Or a bank president telling Henry Ford in 1903, "The horse is here to stay. The automobile is only a novelty, a fad." Andy Grove at Intel dismissing the idea of a personal communicator in every pocket in '92. And Steve Ballmer at Microsoft laughing publicly at the iPhone in 2007, saying it had no chance. Ouch. Bartlett even experienced this himself. 2012, he's 19, trying to persuade a big fashion brand's marketing director about social media. He got berated, mocked, and dismissed. The director feared criticism, loss of control of that brand, filed for bankruptcy in 2019.
Leaning out, as Bartlett defines it, isn't just being wrong. It's being so arrogantly certain you're right that you actively refuse to listen or learn when new information challenges your view. It's driven by cognitive dissonance, that mental stress from holding conflicting beliefs pioneered by Leon Festinger. Research shows this dissonance is most painful when facts destabilize how we see ourselves, our identity. We feel threatened.
So we dig in our heels.
Exactly. We'd almost rather be dead than wrong. When we make a public commitment to something, our brains fight unconsciously to prove us right, even against evidence. Think of Elliot Aronson's experiment. People who endured a tough initiation liked a dull group more than those who joined easily. That's the sunk cost fallacy, justifying bad decisions based on past effort. Bartlett's early social media company faced this too, called Parasites, a fad. It shows that deep human resistance to listening to the other side, especially when it's disruptive. And this resistance is only going to get worse, probably. Ray Kurzweil predicts 20,000 years of progress this century alone.
20,000 years in one century. That's staggering.
It implies a massive increase in change, which means a massive increase in cognitive dissonance. That uncomfortable feeling that something doesn't fit your worldview, you'll feel it more often.
Right.
But there are ways to manage this. The Shimon Peres solution, championed by Aronson and Carol Tavris, is powerful. Peres, facing a divisive issue, Reagan visiting a cemetery with Nazi graves, said, "When a friend makes a mistake, the friend remains a friend, and the mistake remains a mistake."
Holding the complexity.
Exactly. He refused a simplistic binary choice. It teaches us to embrace nuance. Two conflicting ideas can be true at once. It's not about rejecting the old or the new, but seeing the merit or potential in both, expanding your mental model, not locking it down.
Right. That's a really profound shift. It challenges us to actively fight that instinct, to cling to the familiar, especially when the new feels uncomfortable. It means consciously seeking out new trends, even if they seem bizarre at first. So think about it. Where might you be leaning out right now? What weird trend or disruptive idea are you dismissing without really looking into it, just because it doesn't fit? The takeaway: the world's speeding up. Lean into the discomfort of the new to stay relevant. Growth isn't in what you know, but in your willingness to question, learn, adapt. Okay, let's shift now to pillar the second. How stories and marketing define you. This pillar dives into how public perception, the narratives we craft around ourselves and our work, are absolutely crucial for success. Reality isn't always king. Sometimes the story is. We're kicking off with a really counterintuitive one. Law 10. Useless absurdity will define you more than useful practicalities. The core idea. Sometimes the most powerful marketing tool, the thing that makes a brand unforgettable, is something seemingly useless or even absurd. Bartlett tells this brilliant story from his first company.
He got £300,000 in investment and spent £13,000 of it on a massive blue slide in the office. He admits it was immature and the slide was barely used. But it became the single biggest driver of our media publicity. Every major press outlet, TV channel, blog mentioned it. Hundreds of photos. BBC called their office the coolest in the country. That slide wasn't just decoration. It screamed, "This company is different, young, disruptive." It communicated their identity way better than any standard campaign could. And she gives other great examples. Third Space Gym in London, super high-end place, has a massive 100-foot climbing wall right at the entrance. Impressive, sure, but useless absurdity for most members who never use it. Yet it generates huge buzz, communicates aspiration. Or Brewdog, the brewery known for being punk rock. They put fully stocked beer fridges inside the showers in their hotel chain. Absurd, yes. Probably rarely used, likely, but Google it, tons of photos. It shouts Brewdog's identity. We're punk. We break rules. This hotel gives you great social content.
What's fascinating here is that humans are actually incentivized to share things that challenge the status quo, things that are quirky or mock norms, more than things that just maintain them. That's why these absurd things go viral and stick in our minds. The difficulty, though, is measuring the direct ROI. How do you quantify the value of a slide or a shower beer fridge? That's why founders who often have deeper conviction and are less risk-averse are more likely to do this than, say, appointed CEOs answering to quarterly reports. Rory Sutherland from Ogilvy nails it. Meaning is conveyed by the things we do that are not in our own short-term self-interest, by the costs that we incur and the risks we take. These absurdities aren't just gimmicks, they powerfully signal identity, values, boldness in a way practical features rarely can. They create a story.
That's a great point. It really pushes you to think beyond just features and benefits. What useless absurdity could you introduce into your project, your personal brand, even your team culture that would powerfully define who you are and create unforgettable buzz? The takeaway: don't just be practical, be memorable. Sometimes the most illogical thing becomes your most powerful story. Okay, another key part of defining your story: actually getting and holding attention. Which brings us to Law 18. Fight for the first 5 seconds. This law feels more relevant than ever in our hyper-distracted world. In any communication, a speech, video, email, even a chat, those first 5 seconds are make or break. They determine if you capture attention or get filtered out by our brain's habituation mechanisms. Bartlett himself applies this ruthlessly. In his big speeches, he'd open with 4 intensely emotional sentences about his mom and dropping out of uni. No intro, no pleasantries. It was do or die, grab them immediately or lose them. His marketing companies, amazingly, never had an outbound sales team. They attracted huge clients like Coke and Apple by telling captivating, surprising, and emotional stories, not dry pitches or data dumps.
He learned this from his own short attention span as a student, he admits. And look at Mr. Beast, maybe the biggest YouTuber globally. His secret, those hooks in the first 5 seconds, he immediately screams a compelling promise. I recreated every single set from Squid Game in real life. No messing around. It bypasses that habituation filter, stops you clicking away. No generic intros, logos, B-roll, straight to the core promise.
The data backs this up completely. Johan Hari, in Stolen Focus, talks about our dwindling attention spans, office workers checking phones 1,500 times a week. Average web page visit is 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Yeah. Bartlett's own YouTube data for his podcast shows a massive 40-60% viewer drop-off in the first few seconds of longer videos. It proves those first 5 seconds disproportionately dictate the fate of everything that follows. He shares a great case study, a client video. They just re-edited the first 5 seconds, removed an establishing shot and a long logo. That tiny change made it go viral, boosted views by 150%. It shows how a small tweak at the very start can have a massive downstream effect. It's all about that initial impression.
This law is just such an urgent reminder. Be absolutely ruthless with your opening. Email subject line, first sentence of a presentation, social media hook, even how you start a crucial conversation. You must earn attention in those first 5 seconds. Ditch the warm-ups, the pleasantries. Get straight to your most compelling point, surprising fact, or intriguing question. The takeaway here feels stark. In a noisy world, attention is earned, not given. Win the first 5 seconds or risk losing everything that follows. All right, let's move into Pillar 3. The philosophy, beliefs, values, and behaviors. This section really gets into the fundamental beliefs, the core values, the consistent behaviors that drive greatness. It's about the invisible architecture behind success, not just what you do, but how you do it. Kicking off this pillar, we have Law 19. You must sweat the small stuff. The core idea here is brilliantly counterintuitive. True, lasting success. It's not usually about one big heroic gesture or a single moment of genius. Instead, it's meticulously built through almost obsessive attention to the small, often overlooked details. Bartlett puts it bluntly. The easiest way to do big things is by focusing on the small things. He points to his own podcast, The Diary of a CEO. It became the UK's most downloaded, even outpaced Joe Rogan on YouTube subscribers at one point. He says it wasn't because he was the absolute best interviewer or got the most famous guests necessarily. It was a relentless focus on thousands of small details. Things like researching a guest's favorite music and subtly playing it in the background to make them feel comfortable. Finding the optimal room temperature. A/B testing countless titles and thumbnails with AI weeks before publishing. Hiring an in-house data scientist just for AI translation. Using data models for guest booking and episode length. Just thousands of details.
This relentless, almost microscopic attention to detail. It's deeply rooted in the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, continuous improvement. Toyota famously used Kaizen to overtake GM, becoming the world's largest automaker through this unwavering commitment. The NMMI plant example from the 80s is classic. GM's worst plant, terrible quality, low productivity, awful labor relations. Toyota took over, rehired 90% of the same workers, used the same facility. The key change: they drastically simplified management from 14 levels to 3. And crucially, they empowered every single team member on the floor to constantly find and implement small improvements. These tiny suggestions cumulatively drove massive progress.
It's the compounding effect again.
Exactly, the power of marginal gains. Bartlett gives that example. If you start with 100 pounds and improve just 1% daily, after a year, it's nearly 3,800 pounds. After 7 years, it's astronomically huge, over 10 trillion pounds. Toyota also had this clever suggestion system. Suggestions had to be practical, and the person suggesting had to implement it. It stopped mere complaining and fostered real action. This also avoids motivation crowding, where external rewards like money for suggestions can actually reduce intrinsic drive, something Daniel Pink has researched extensively. The goal is to build a culture, through recognition and celebration, that shows the smallest of things, the easiest and most accessible things, can have the biggest of impacts.
That's such a different way to think about achieving big goals. Stop looking for the silver bullet. Instead, look for those tiny, manageable 1% improvements in your daily work, your life, your relationships, knowing they'll compound over time. The takeaway: don't chase perfection, chase 1% progression. Greatness isn't one big thing done perfectly. It's a million small things done consistently well. Okay, staying in the philosophy, let's look at Law 21. You must outfail the competition. This one's bold, almost provocative. It claims a higher failure rate, especially through rapid experimentation, actually correlates with a higher chance of success. Failures aren't setbacks, they're invaluable feedback. They provide crucial knowledge. Bartlett mentions Thomas J. Watson Sr. from IBM. He famously didn't fire an employee who cost the company $600,000 with a mistake. Watson reportedly said, "No, I just spent $600,000 training him. Why would I want somebody else to hire his experience?" He saw failure as tuition, as accelerated learning. Look at Booking.com, the huge hotel site. Their former CEO, Gillian Tans, openly said, "We failed so many times." Their massive growth wasn't from big redesigns, but relentless, constant testing. They had an experimentation platform back in 2005 running thousands of tests simultaneously. Jeff Bezos at Amazon echoes this. Failure and invention are inseparable twins. He pushed for big swings, understanding the long-tailed distribution of returns. The idea that a few massive winners, Prime, Echo, Kindle, AWS, pay for hundreds of smaller experiments and outright failures, like the A9 search engine or the Fire phone. Bezos also distinguished Type 1 decisions, big, irreversible, needing slow deliberation, from Type 2, changeable, reversible, okay to make quickly. He criticized big companies for using slow Type 1 processes for fast Type 2 decisions, which kills speed, experimentation, and invention. Bartlett saw this himself, advising an e-commerce company with two brands. Father runs one, son runs the other. The son's brand massively outperformed the father's, hitting over $1 billion in revenue. Why? The son had a failure rate that exceeded that of his father by a factor of 10. When Bartlett's team found a new social media growth trick, the son adopted it immediately, a quick Type 2 decision. The father's team delayed 10 months. By then, the opportunity was gone. The son understood. The biggest cost isn't failing sometimes. It's missing the chance to learn and adapt.
And that resistance to experimentation, often it's bureaucracy, which Bartlett calls a tax on human ingenuity. It disempowers people, slows things down, stifles innovation. Hair Group in China brilliantly avoids this by splitting 75,000 employees into 4,000 agile micro-organizations for super-fast decisions and testing. A big issue in many companies is misaligned incentives. Leaders say fail faster, that employees are often rewarded for just doing their job and avoiding mistakes, fearing embarrassment, or getting fired.
Like the talk doesn't match the walk.
Exactly. The solution: fundamentally shift incentives. Celebrate the execution of experiments regardless of the outcome, because execution is controllable and builds a learning culture. Bartlett's companies actually promoted people with high failure rates in experiments, and they quickly removed bad apples. HBR research shows toxic employees are contagious, dragging down morale.
This law feels like a real call to action for anyone wanting to innovate. Embrace experimentation. See failure as feedback, as data. Build systems professionally and personally that reward learning and bold action, not fear of mistakes. The takeaway: your biggest advantage isn't avoiding failure, it's learning from it faster than anyone else. Fail often, fail smart, turn setbacks into fuel. Let's tackle a fundamental human tendency now: avoiding uncomfortable truths. Law 23, don't be an ostrich. This law confronts our deep urge to bury our heads in the sand when faced with bad news or difficult realities, but it argues powerfully. Confronting reality, however unpleasant, is essential for progress and well-being. Bartlett opens with that chilling, almost bizarre story of the Titanic sinking. Passengers displayed astonishing calm disbelief. Some refused lifeboats, saying they'd rather take my chances on the sinking ship. Crew had to physically force people, fire warning shots to get action. And this avoidance mechanism, it's wired deep. We see the ostrich effect everywhere today. Avoiding bank accounts after overspending, delaying doctor visits to avoid bad news.
Investors not checking portfolios in downturns. If I don't see it, it's not real. Bartlett himself is candid. His biggest regrets weren't bad decisions, but the instinctively obvious but terribly uncomfortable decisions I didn't make. Not firing someone he should have. Avoiding tough client talks. Delaying warnings to his board. In relationships, this shows up as co-denial or wrong arguments, fighting about surface stuff while deeper issues fester, holding failing relationships together precariously. Bartlett makes a really poignant point. Pain is unavoidable, but the pain that we create by trying to avoid pain is avoidable.
Nir Eyal, the behavioral design expert, offers a great perspective. He says human behavior is fundamentally driven by seeking pleasure and avoiding discomfort. Distraction is almost always an unhealthy escape from reality. Bartlett, from his own tough lessons, developed a practical four-step approach to deal with this discomfort, this ostrich effect. 1. Pause and acknowledge. Deliberately admit something isn't right. Create that mental space. 2. Review yourself. Honestly inspect your feelings, behaviors, emotions. Articulate what feels wrong, like a detective identifying the crime scene. 3. Critically, speak your truth. Share your findings openly, but crucially, without blame and taking personal responsibility. This shifts wrong conversations to right conversations. He argues, paradoxically, talking about our disconnections creates more connectedness.
The vulnerability actually builds connection.
Exactly. And the fourth step, implied throughout his work on taking action, is simply to act. Take tangible steps based on the uncomfortable truth you've uncovered. Confronting these realities is the only path to real progress and healthier outcomes.
This law really holds up a mirror, doesn't it? Where are you being an ostrich right now? What uncomfortable truth are you avoiding in your career, relationships, health? It's an invitation to lean into that discomfort. Because facing reality, however hard, is the only way to build stronger relationships, make better decisions, reach your potential. The takeaway: ignorance isn't bliss, it's just delayed pain. Embrace the discomfort of truth today to avoid bigger regrets tomorrow. Okay, let's talk proactive strategies now for preventing failure. Law 25. The power of negative manifestation. This law champions a crucial, but often skipped step, proactively asking why will this idea fail. It's also known as a pre-mortem. Bartlett did this internal survey of 1,000 startup founders, found something startling. Only 6% were clear on why their idea could fail, but a massive 87% were clear on why it would succeed. It just highlights this pervasive, potentially dangerous optimism bias in entrepreneurship.
And this optimism bias, our resistance to asking the seemingly negative question, it's rooted in several psychological biases we often have. Confirmation bias, seeking info that confirms what we already believe. Optimism bias, overestimating positive outcomes. The planning fallacy, underestimating time and cost, overestimating benefits, sunk cost fallacy, continuing just because we've already invested, and groupthink bias, conforming to the group, avoiding disagreement even with valid concerns. Bartlett himself felt the power of this question. He'd spent 12 months, hundreds of thousands of dollars planning a new podcast network. Right before giving the final go-ahead, he gathered his core team and just asked, "Why is this a bad idea?"
Wow, that must have been uncomfortable.
Totally. But that question, which no one had dared ask or answer before, immediately surfaced hidden concerns, especially about diluting focus. The team, feeling safe to speak up, unanimously voted to kill the project. Hindsight in 2022 confirmed it averted a costly mistake. This is the essence of the pre-mortem method from cognitive psychologist Gary Klein. Instead of asking what could go wrong, where you imagine the project has already failed, then ask everyone why it failed. Studies show this simple shift increases prediction accuracy by up to 30%. Barack Obama, facing high-stakes decisions, embraced probability, not certainty. He aimed for 51% certainty and valued diverse opinions before making a decisive move. He understood, especially in business, the real cost of indecision is wasted time. Time that could be spent failing, learning, iterating towards success.
This law offers such a valuable tool for anyone making big decisions, personal or professional. Before you commit new project, new job, major life change, gather trusted advisors, or just do a rigorous self-reflection. Conduct a pre-mortem. Ask, if this totally failed, what would be the concrete reasons why? It's not pessimistic. It's about identifying pitfalls proactively and building resilience before you hit them. The takeaway: don't just plan for success, rigorously plan for failure. Asking why will this fail is your best tool for ensuring it won't. All right, let's move to our final pillar, pillar 4, the team assembling and getting the best out of people. This pillar really emphasizes a fundamental truth. At its core, every company, project, or organization is just a group of people. Ultimately, everything produced, good or bad, comes from the collective minds, efforts, interactions of those people. We begin this final pillar with a really liberating idea, Law 28. Ask who, not how. The core concept of building great things. Focus intensely on who can do something, delegate to experts, rather than trying to learn how to do everything yourself. Bartlett shares this great anecdote from interviewing Richard Branson. Branson candidly admitted, "I'm not brilliant at things I'm not brilliant at." This really hit home for Bartlett. Despite building a huge company, he often felt like a fraud because he wasn't great at maths, spelling, complex operations. He realized his strength was creative vision, product creation. His success came from identifying weaknesses and courageously delegating everything else to people far better at it. And Jimmy Carr, the comedian, surprisingly makes a similar point with his usual wit. School teaches us mediocrity and being all-rounders, yet we live in a world that does not reward all-rounders. He advises, find out what you've got a natural ability for, and just lean into that. It aligns perfectly, double down on strengths, delegate weaknesses for overall excellence. It's specialization, not generalization.
It's just undeniably true. Business is all about people. A CEO's main job isn't to be an expert in everything or do every task. It's to hire the best individuals possible and then, crucially, bind them with a culture that gets the best out of them, making the whole team greater than the sum of its parts. Founders often fall into the trap of overstating their importance, thinking their brilliance alone drives everything. But true greatness, Bartlett powerfully argues, is defined by the sum total of the ingenuity, ideas, and execution of the group of people that you assemble. Every breakthrough idea, every great campaign, every innovation. It all stems from the collective minds and efforts of the people you hire and empower. It's about collective genius, not individual ego.
This law feels like such a necessary ego check. It forces you to be honest about your strengths and, more importantly, your weaknesses. Then courageously delegate where others excel, freeing you up for your unique contribution. Are you trying to do it all, maybe out of a need for control or perfectionism? When your potential and your project's potential insists you leverage others' strengths. The takeaway: your ego insists you do it all. Your potential insists you delegate. Stop asking how. Start asking who. Okay, let's dive into a fascinating, maybe sometimes controversial idea in team building. Law 29. Create a cult mentality. This law explores how, especially in the startup's early days, a cult-like mentality, extreme shared commitment, intense devotion to a mission can be incredibly powerful for momentum. But crucially, it also explains why that intensity is ultimately unsustainable long-term. Peter Thiel, PayPal co-founder, famously said, "You should run your startup like a cult." He clarified, "Conventional cults are fanatically wrong, but successful startups are fanatically right about something those outside it have missed." It's not about manipulation. It's about fostering intense, singular belief that drives the team. Of course, the phrase "drinking the Kool-Aid" comes from the horrific Jim Jones mass suicide, an extreme example of unquestioning groupthink and fatal devotion. Bartlett identifies 4 stages of building a company: cult, growth, enterprise, decline. The cult phase, the 0 to 1 stage, is marked by almost delusional belief, raw enthusiasm, intense urgency. This often leads to all-in sacrifice social life, well-being to get the business launched. Steve Jobs described the early Mac team as all A players who only wanted to work with other A players, creating this organic self-policing environment where excellence was the standard.
The core ingredients of a successful cult, and by extension, successful early companies, share commonalities: a strong sense of community, deep belonging, a crystal clear, compelling shared mission, an inspirational leader embodying the vision, often an us versus them mentality, maybe against competitors or the status quo. Bartlett lists 10 ways to foster this: clear purpose, agreed behaviors, compelling myth stories, unique identity, celebrating progress, encouraging camaraderie. However, and this is the crucial part, he stresses why this intense obsession is fundamentally unsustainable long-term. It's emotionally grueling, leads to burnout. For enduring success, a company must transition from that intense launchpad to a sustainable culture: authentic engagement, autonomy, meaningful challenge, sense of progress, psychological safety. Cultish obsession can be a powerful rocket booster, but it's not a sustainable way to fly.
This law offers such nuance. It gives permission for intense passion, fierce devotion, a strong shared mission early on. But it's also a critical warning. Know when to shift from that all-in sprint to a more sustainable human-centric culture. The challenge for you: how can you harness the positive power of shared purpose and strong community while avoiding the unsustainable or toxic elements of an overly intense cultish approach? The takeaway: build with fervor, but scale with humanity. Intensity launches, sustainability endures. Our final law today, and a really insightful one challenging conventional management. Law 30. You must be an inconsistent leader. This directly challenges the idea that effective leaders treat everyone uniformly. Instead, it argues true leadership requires treating individuals differently, tailoring your approach based on their unique motivators, needs, how they respond best, not a rigid one-size-fits-all method. Bartlett uses the brilliant example of Sir Alex Ferguson, the legendary Manchester United manager. Ferguson's philosophy: nobody is bigger than the club, unequivocal. He was famous, sometimes controversial, for transferring star players, Beckham, Stam, Van Nistelrooy, if they challenged the team ethos or became disruptive, regardless of their talent. The team culture came first. Rio Ferdinand, who played under Ferguson, testified that Ferguson knew everything about his players: granddad's favorite drink, wives' hobbies, tiny details. He used this deep individual understanding to motivate each player exactly how they needed it. Ferdinand said he had different ways of dealing with different players, sometimes the famous hair dryer treatment, furious shouting, other times a compassionate arm around the shoulder. This nuanced understanding wasn't just managing. It inspired players to fight harder, feeling truly seen and understood.
And this individualized approach is crucial because, as HBR research shows, a bad apple can spoil the barrel. Toxic employees aren't just bad in isolation, they're contagious, spreading negative behavior.
The social multiplier effect.
Exactly. Ferguson knew protecting the culture sometimes meant removing individuals who were net negatives, even talented ones. This links to Bartlett's 3 bars of leadership: fire, hire, train. Firing, especially high performers who are culturally toxic, is hard due to psychological friction, that ostrich effect again, but essential for the culture's long-term health. It also connects beautifully to Sir David Brailsford's marginal gains theory at British Cycling. Brailsford focused on 1% improvements across hundreds of tiny things: antibacterial gel, bike seats, sleep patterns. This relentless pursuit of tiny gains led to unprecedented success: Olympics, Tour de France wins. Brailsford focused on progression, not perfection. He found people are motivated by feeling progress, even tiny progress. As he said, tiny progress means a lot to people. When they feel it, they realize they can do it again tomorrow. This creates an energized culture where ideas flow, people feel they're moving forward. Leaders foster this with clear OKRs, autonomy, removing friction, and constantly broadcasting progress.
This law really challenges us to ditch the simplistic idea of treating everyone equally. Embrace inconsistent leadership for consistent results. It's about truly understanding the unique shape, strengths, weaknesses, motivators of each person on your team or in your relationships. Then tailoring your approach to get the absolute best out of them. The takeaway: true leadership isn't treating everyone the same. It's treating everyone exactly how they need to be treated, making every piece of the puzzle fit perfectly. And that brings us toward the close of this deep dive into Steven Bartlett's laws of greatness. We've journeyed through his framework, mastering the self, crafting stories, living by a philosophy, building teams. Not just abstract ideas, but actionable paths. What really stands out is that greatness isn't usually one big gesture, but consistent, meticulous application of these principles, often in surprisingly counterintuitive ways.
Indeed. Connecting them to the bigger picture, these laws really underscore the incredible power of perception in shaping reality, the amazing compound effect of small, consistent efforts, and the absolute necessity of deeply understanding human behavior and psychology. Bartlett's work, rooted in his own hard-won experience, backed by research, informed by hundreds of hours of interviews, it provides a genuinely practical playbook. It's a guide for anyone wanting to build great things and become great themselves by working with our brain's wiring, not against it.
So what does all this mean for you listening right now? I encourage you to maybe pause, reflect. Pick just one or two laws that really resonated. Then commit to actively experimenting with them in your own life, starting today. Whether it's consciously putting knowledge first, meticulously crafting those first 5 seconds, or reframing pressure as privilege, even small shifts can have massive compounding returns.
And maybe this raises a final question for you to mull over today. If our truth is often the story we choose to believe, and our potential insists that we delegate, what seemingly useless absurdity might be the key to unlocking your next big breakthrough?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making those subtle, powerful shifts that lead towards greatness.
Thanks for tuning in to the Book Summary Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, hit that like button, subscribe for more summaries, and share it with someone who's ready to grow. Want deeper insights, exclusive book notes, and reading tips? Join our free newsletter. The link's in the description. And don't forget, if you'd like to read the full book, our affiliate link is right below. It helps support the channel and keeps the summaries coming. Until next time, keep reading, keep growing.